never get to the right answer using those two things, come in at the direction that the government is attacking us, and everything falls into place. But to answer your immediate question, let's go back to The Guardian, 27th of April last year. The government's secret science group has a shocking lack of expertise. So here you are, even The Guardian have worked out that SAGE was highly secretive. And even when The Guardian did some quite good investigative journalism to find out who the scientists were on the group, it said the makeup of SAGE reflects an oddly skewed and overwhelmingly medical view of science. Well, we might not even agree with that sentence, but clearly The Guardian knew that something was very, very wrong with this group of people that were going to lock us down for whatever it is, 483 days.
Well, this is the thing. You need to understand where the advice is coming from. You need to understand the worldview of the people given the advice. If they're communists, if they're interested in totalitarian government, if they do not value the individual, if they see only groups, if they think that state intervention is necessary in order to achieve their view of the great utopia that is to come, then that's significant. That's going to skew the advice. These people have to be open to scrutiny, to questioning. And they're not. It's all secret. It's all hidden. When one of them was asked about her communist tendencies, she got very indignant with the interviewer and said, I'm a scientist, my political views have nothing to do with it. That alone, that statement alone should invalidate her and should get her the sack, because that statement alone shows that she's either being deceptive or she doesn't have the sense that God gave her when she was born.
Okay.
So where does that take us? Mary Jane Newman, David.
Right. This young lady here flew from Ireland to her native New Zealand. She's essentially she's interested in wellness, health, well-being, and modifying your lifestyle to increase all of these things. She's professionally, she coaches people in these areas. So she's someone who's thinking out of the conventional box. She got home to New Zealand and she found that New Zealand had changed. We have a little video.
I'm Sam Bailey, and joining me on the show today is a very courageous individual, Mary Jane Newman, who is sharing her shocking experience of what happened in a New Zealand managed isolation and quarantine facility. What happened when you first arrived in New Zealand?
Yeah, this is when things started to really change. I mean, when I first arrived in the country, it was also very apparent that the New Zealand I'd left was not the New Zealand I had returned to. When I arrived, particularly in the facility that I was being quarantined in, which was the Sudima Hotel in Christchurch by the airport, you are given some paperwork that they ask you to complete once you've been shown to your room. And I looked through the paperwork, and one of the pieces of paperwork was consenting to having everything that you are having delivered to the hotel searched. So yeah, I was just like, oh wow, that's quite full on, because this is my private things that I'm having delivered. And if I want to have those things, I need to consent to having my things searched. Now, I wasn't going to be having anything strange delivered, it was just going to be foodstuffs. But still, it is an invasion of my privacy. However, one of the other pieces of paper that you have to sign is consenting to have this PCR test on day 3 and on day 12 of your stay. And I just didn't sign the paperwork. I believe it was within 24 hours of handing back that paperwork that I started to receive knocks on my door asking me about why I was not consenting to the test.
So she didn't consent to PCR test for obvious reasons to do with the potential damage that the test can cause, and the huge unreliability. She'd done the research. She knew that the originator of the test said it wasn't diagnostic in any event, so she wasn't prepared to undergo that examination for that outcome. then she was a marked person. She wasn't allowed out into the exercise yard. She was confined to her room, and things developed from there.
You know, approximately 12:30, 1 o'clock, and someone would knock on the door and say lunch, and same for dinner. It was usually around about 6 o'clock. Someone would come along, and you could hear them coming along the corridor, you know, knocking on everyone's door and saying dinner. So 6 o'clock came, and I could hear them coming along the corridor, and I'm like, awesome, because I'm hungry. I heard the trolley coming and going, and nothing got dropped outside my door. And I was like, oh, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe it was another corridor and I just was a bit confused. Anyway, 6:30 came and still nothing outside my door. 7 o'clock came, still nothing outside my door. And by 7:30, I'm like, I'm really hungry. I haven't had my stuff delivered from my friend, and I also haven't had my meal delivered for the evening. So I go outside my door, and there's a soldier sitting outside my door now. I say to him, has dinner been delivered? And he says, yes, it has. And I said, has my dinner been withheld? And he said, yes, it has. And I said, and are you now outside my door to guard my door? And he said, yes, I am. However, what then happened after I again refused to consent was a nurse, who I believe was one of the senior nurses within the team, a sergeant from the military, and a police officer arrived at my door. So basically I was given a couple of choices. I consent to the PCR test, and if I don't consent, then I get moved to another room in the hotel, which is even more confined, or I run the risk of being arrested and deported.
So the outcome of this was she was put in essentially an isolation wing where she wasn't allowed out of her room. This was a wing that was reserved for people who had COVID. She was the only person there, and of course she was entirely well. Her stay was extended from 10 days or 14 days, as it was at the start, 14 days I think, to 22 days. And right up to the last day, she didn't know if she was being released. When she finally was, even that was quite strange.
Anyway, thankfully the person who did come up was a very friendly, very helpful member of the military team that were there. And as we walked down through the hotel corridors, he was asking me some questions about my time. And it became very apparent very, very quickly that he, and probably most other people, had absolutely no idea that I had been kept in that room without being able to go outside for the entirety of my time in there. Because he said to me when I described it, he said, that's solitary confinement that you've been kept in. And I was like, I know. He said, I thought you were allowed outside, you know, escorted with a soldier. And I was like, no, I said, I haven't been allowed outside since I arrived. I said, I wasn't allowed to cross the threshold of my doorway. And he's like, wow, he said, that is solitary confinement. He said, we don't even do that in our military training. And I was like, I know. Whoever was calling the shots on this, most of the other people in there had absolutely no idea about what was going on. And once I arrived into the reception part of the hotel, there was at least maybe half a dozen other soldiers who were lined up, waiting, it felt like, to see who this person was that had been in this room, that they clearly had heard about but not seen because I wasn't allowed out. And members of the hotel staff, you know, approached me and were like, Merry Christmas, Mary Jane, and I had no idea who they were. It was just the most surreal experience as I left the facility. I'd gone from this person who needed to be quarantined in a room, you know, that had to be guarded, to all of a sudden almost feeling like some kind of pseudo celebrity status. Not that I felt like a celebrity, but it was just all of a sudden I was just this thing that was on show. Here she is, she's the one. It felt just weird and odd and sick in some way. It's just like, yeah, this is the one that we've punished. Here she is, you know, hasn't she done well?
So, any form of resistance, any form of personal autonomy over your body, any form of decision that you might make over what medical treatment you have is viewed as non-compliance. And non-compliance, in this case, equaled food being withheld, solitary confinement for 22 days in a single room, no adequate exercise, and a military guard, all to intimidate, and other minor irritations to disrupt your equilibrium as well. This is New Zealand in the 21st century, Brian.
Incredible, isn't it? The Commonwealth, let's describe it as one of Britain's Commonwealth countries, where, of course, freedom and democracy and justice and equality for all of the key tenets, except when COVID appears on the scene. I wanted to just say that lady telling her story in a very calm, measured and quiet way, but actually what she's talking about, as you've highlighted, would have had huge impact on most people. To be locked in a room where you don't know who's in control of you, somebody can deny you food, somebody who could put a soldier outside your door. This is worse than the Soviet system, because at least people in the Soviet system knew what to expect from their government. But we've got a New Zealand government which stands on a world stage talking about equality and gay rights, etc., etc. But the reality is that they are the complete opposite. So this, in my mind, always makes what's happening worse than if we point a finger at Stalin's regime or the Nazi regime or the Soviets, because this is done by men and women in suits in warm, quiet offices, as that famous quote goes.
Right, look, sorry, David, go ahead.
It's also happening in the UK. More on that next week.
Okay, well, look, we're right out of time, but I just wanted to finish with this. And this is MoLogic, and they are a leader apparently in lateral flow testing. Well, they have, as you can see there, published today an update. MoLogic has become a social enterprise after acquisition by social impact funders and investors. Guess who that might be?
Go on, Mike.
Well, it's none other than George Soros and Bill Gates. So a group of philanthropic funds and investors led by the Soros Economic Development Fund with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is today announcing the launch of Global Access Health, a social enterprise that will seek to expand access to affordable state-of-the-art medical technology through decentralized research, development and manufacturing in and for the Global South. The group has financed the acquisition of MoLogic Limited, a world-leading innovator in the development of lateral flow and rapid diagnostic technologies, including tests that can help combat tropical diseases such as dengue and COVID-19. And it goes on to say that Open Society Foundations, founded by its chairman, George Soros, is the world's largest private funders of human rights and social justice advocacy groups. The Soros Economic Development Fund, established in 1997, pursues impact investments that are aligned with Open Society's broader mission and currently holds 35 investments totaling $300 million. So, David, just very briefly, we intend perhaps to expand our test and trace and the success of test and trace with 1.7 million people self-isolating to every part of the world.
Well, it's been such a success because then we can have nothing happening in any business anywhere on the globe unless the little screen on your phone says it can. What a unique way of controlling the population that would be.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, we've got a sticker to finish with, which was kindly sent to us from Rhyl in Wales. Let's bring it up. So this was a sticker on the back window of a bus stop where there was a formal sticker saying "keep a safe distance," but the little sticker that was posted shows a picture of a lady with a mask. She's very blotchy. She's got one eye closed. She does not look well. But that lady